If I hear the score, go ahead and watch it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll make that announcement at the
Okay.
very beginning because I know there's a lot of people that are very interested in
Yeah.
the score. So, plus by joining us, you get to avoid all the commercials. You can go and watch every at bat
That's
and not do.
exactly.
I've learned that trick.
It's 3 minutes in between. Anytime there's a commercial break, it's 3 minutes. We got it timed perfectly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
Okay.
Right in the middle of a Dodgers game?
that's it. Hey, we're dedicated public servants.
I have my Dodger blue on, even though I'm not even a Dodgers fan. So I know that's heresy, but my friends back home would be very disappointed if I said I was a Dodgers fan. So, but I would like them to beat the Yankees. So they,
Yeah,
you know, so we'll give this a minute or two. Sometimes
sure.
uh, we tend to have folks come in at the last moment. So, hi, Barb.
Hi, Todd. How are you doing?
How are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm doing good. Hanging in.
Okay, good. Good. How's everybody doing? You know what's coming up? I just found out today. The time change. Does anybody like the time change this weekend? Can we get rid
No.
of that once and for all?
Uh,
What's the reason why?
Uh,
kids,
What's
industrial, we need to support the war effort.
Oh, okay. Which war?
War one. That was the
Yeah.
original. You
Was
know,
it?
is various people came up with different reasons, but that was, I think, it was to say conserve energy during World War One is what the one I remember.
But
So,
I don't see how it conserves energy. You take it off one end and you put it on the other.
I think because if you end work earlier when it gets dark, you don't have to have the lights on. I think that's what it is. Then there was the argument that kids walking to school at 8 in the morning, but there's
yep,
only like a 3 week period where it
yeah,
it would be dark, and
yeah,
I find that hard to believe as
yeah,
well too. It depends
Yeah.
on where you are in the time zone. A lot of
yeah,
places. So
yeah. Hawaii doesn't have it. We live there, and
yeah,
I didn't,
Arizona doesn't have it either.
I
They're
didn't,
um,
I didn't notice anything, or yeah.
well,
I recall as a kid in the 70s during the energy crisis, they started in February and we were all going to school in the dark.
Oh,
but you turned out okay.
Well, depends on who you ask.
Okay, maybe that's a good point. That's a valid point. But yeah, we had a vote about 7 or 8 years ago to end it, and Congress has never passed it. I think it's the one thing that all of Congress agrees on is to get rid of it,
wow.
except the folks that are being lobbied by the airlines. I read they need like 3 or 4 years to adjust their schedules, is what I read.
Oh, wow.
But they've
Well,
had
I think part of it, there's a debate. Do you stay on daylight savings time year round or do you stay on standard time year round?
daylight savings time is when it's darker, when it's light or late, right?
Right.
Then I think that's what you do. I think that's what the bill was, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yes, it was.
then there's a whole thing that people have heart attacks during the change. There's more accidents, but if you don't have a change, you don't have that issue.
Hmm.
So anyway, I'm gonna broadcast this on Facebook. So give me a second, and then we'll get started. Okay, we're going live. Okay, great. We are now streaming live on Facebook. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the October, nearly November District 2 community meeting. And I want to welcome you as your host. I am City Council Member Todd Lewinstein. I know you know that by now. I've seen every one of you multiple times. And we have a nice meeting tonight. It's a public safety town hall. And I want to do this for several reasons. One is it's always a first priority for people. Public safety in our community is always important. And also we have a ballot measure, Measure FP, that is on the November 5th ballot next week. So if you have not voted yet, it's an all mail-in ballot, I believe. So you can actually, no, you can actually vote in person, I believe, correct? So you can fill out your ballot, vote yes on Measure FP. We'll be talking about that in a little bit, and submit it either by dropping it in one of the boxes, or you can bring it to the polling place on Tuesday, or you can, I think, come in person, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about Measure RB, which is the other citywide measure. There's a couple other measures that are related to the school district, but Measure RB is also deserves your vote. That is to make sure that when we do have a change or an amendment to our general plan, that it does not trigger what's called a DD vote, which would mean everybody has to vote for it in order for it to pass. And so this is something that deserves your attention as well too. If you are like me, not in favor of large development from out of town developers coming in and triggering what's known as builder's remedy. So keep that in mind. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But tonight we're joined by two very special guests, one of which is Fire Chief Pat Butler, now no longer interim fire chief. It is Patrick Butler, who had joined us from, I believe, LA Fire Department. I think you had a little bit of time in between, right?
Yeah,
And then,
about a year. Yeah.
yeah, well, we'll get into your background. And then a familiar name, Police Chief Joe Hoffman, who I think has been on the job now. Is it 3 years? Close to 3 years?
Yes, close to
Okay.
three.
3 years. My gosh. So we are in very capable hands, our public safety. I can tell you, I think things are going really, really well with public safety. So we'll talk to them about public safety in our town. We'll talk about the measures. And then at 7:30, we'll let you go along your way and watch the Dodger game. The only request I have to make is please do not inform people what the score is, because there's some of us who are recording the game and we don't want to know the results before we watch it. So I know that's a very hard thing to do these days, and in days where you have phones, and it's really hard to avoid the score. But if you can, try not to let the cat out of the bag. So thank you. So welcome, gentlemen. Welcome, Chief Hoffman, Chief Butler. Why don't we start off with Chief Hoffman? Chief Hoffman, you've been here for quite a while in the police department, over 30 years, if I'm not mistaken. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. Am I allowed to share a couple things, or do
You
you not want
may. So let me enable that.
to? Okay.
Okay, you're enabled.
All right. Let's see here. All right. I had a few little slides, but yeah. So I've been at Redondo Beach now for over 30 years, and I put this one up here because it's kind of interesting because that's a picture from when I graduated the police academy in 1995. And so as you can see, tonight I'm wearing that exact same uniform. So I've been wearing that uniform and walking in the same exact door for over 30 years. So I come from a law enforcement family. I know you can't see it now, but behind me is a picture of my dad in his LAPD uniform. He was a detective with LAPD for close to 30 years, and he lived in Redondo Beach. And when I was in high school, I decided I wanted to get into law enforcement. And he tried to talk me out of it. And I said, nope, that's what I want to do. And I said, if you're going to do it all over again, what would you do? He said, well, LA's great. He goes, but these beach cities are absolutely wonderful. I love living in Redondo. He said, why don't you come and apply at Redondo? I didn't know anyone at Redondo. I came down to Redondo Beach and I applied to be a cadet. You may see them running around every now and then in the light blue uniforms, just kind of helping out with various tasks throughout the city. And while I was processing to be a cadet, I volunteered. So my actual first assignment here was a volunteer in the records unit at the police department, which looks exactly the same, which we'll get into later, I suppose, when we talk about the police facilities. And then I was a cadet for a short time, went to the academy. So I know this slide says started at Redondo in 94, which is true, but I actually entered the academy in December of 94. I started as a volunteer in the spring of 94. I live in the South Bay. I don't live in Redondo Beach. I live in Torrance, but I live very, very close. I live in South Torrance, kind of down by the Christmas light area. Been there for over 20 years in that same house. Raised my kids in the area. I have two kids, one in college, one in high school. And I'm very family oriented, and I think that that translates well into my leadership style because I've tried to create a family environment in the police department. Some of the things that I've focused on are improving effective communication and value of every employee. So I like to tell everybody that all of our department members are valued equally. It doesn't matter what your position is, what your rank is, how long you've been here. Everybody has equal value. And that's because we couldn't do the job that we do without all the different roles. So I've tried to bring that family environment into the police department. Little tidbit of information. I sign all of my emails, Joe. My signature block doesn't have chief of police in it. And when people ask me about that, I say it's because I'm fortunate to have this role right now, but realistically, people need to know that I'm just Joe and we all have a different job to do. And I think that that contributes to the effective communication aspect of it. So I'm honored to work for the city. I recently just turned 50 and hit my 30 years. It's quite the milestone to make it 30 years in law enforcement. I've called in sick 3 days in 30 years. And let me tell you, on those 3 days, I did not feel good. I haven't called in sick in probably 15 years, but I love my job. I love working for the city of Redondo Beach, and I'm looking forward to continue to do great things in the future here.
Wow, that's impressive considering we had a worldwide pandemic 4 years ago, right? And you never called in sick once.
Didn't miss a day of work. Didn't miss
Yeah,
a day of work during COVID.
that's amazing. That's amazing. Great, great background. Pat, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background?
For sure. I retired from the Los Angeles Fire Department in 2021. My wife and I, been together 34 years. Our daughters are raised and on their own. And my wife and I always wanted to live in Hawaii. And so in 2021, we moved to Hawaii. We have a place there. About into my 11th month of sitting on the beach, my wife said, "Do you think you could do this another 30 years?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think so." And she said, "Have you considered going back to work?" So that's exactly how it happened. And I said, "Well, yes, but I don't really have any other real big employment history. I've basically spent my whole life in the LAFD. I was an engine machinist. I used to build race boat motors before I came on the job. And so my only job has been the fire department. I spent 32 years in the LAFD. At the height of my career, I worked in the chief of staff's office where I managed the budget, $560 million budget, 3,500 employees. I've worked in the Port of Los Angeles. I was a captain on Fireboat 2. I oversaw operations at LAX. I worked in a lot of high incident activities. I was the director of training, arson, the counterterrorism unit. I oversaw the helicopter operations for the department. I had a lot of fun. I worked in special operations. And in terms of promotion, I've held every rank in the fire service, used to drive the hook and ladder, all the way up to, everything you can imagine. My experience mostly comes from high incident activity areas. I live in Westchester. I live in Los Angeles, right by LMU. During my career, 1992, civil disturbance, 1993 Malibu wildfires. 1994 I was on duty the day of the Northridge earthquakes. Worked for the next 3 days. Station I was in, the windows shattered. I mean, we had a newly designed station, and fortunately it didn't collapse. But three of our other stations that weren't seismic or retrofitted, fortunately the firefighters got out in time. One thing unique about my background as it applies to the bond is in 2000, the year 2000, I was a captain and I was appointed by the fire chief to kind of help lead a team of what we call the bond education team. And we floated a bond in Los Angeles, 348 million to build 19 fire stations. we did it under time and under budget. In fact, we did it under budget and we built the 20th fire station with the money that we had. It passed by 77%. And so it was a really good indication of the support we had. Um, what I'll share a little bit about my background also is I kind of worked in all aspects and I've had to get a good sense.
Oh, no, you're good.
I've had to get a good sense of the fire service. I have degrees and background and a lot of stuff. But one of the things is I was an incident commander for 10 years and I was assigned to these big wildfires throughout the state with a team of team members. I came to Redondo Beach 2 years ago. I love it. I tell my wife I think it brings out the best in me. Los Angeles was fantastic, but I'll be honest, it can have a toxic culture at all levels, and it required a bit of just it's a tough place to work, and I survived. The way you know you survive is that the LA Times didn't write any negative articles, and I wasn't involved with anything of federal indictments, and that happens a lot in LA. And I made it through my career, but I'm glad that I came to a great place. Let me first share with you. I've never worked in a public safety agency where I've seen a police chief work so collaboratively with everyone else. That I just tell you, Joe Hoffman has been fantastic as a partner. If I knew then what I know now, I would have moved to Redondo Beach when I first had kids, because I consider it one of the safest cities with the best public safety, great schools, great culture. Yeah, I'm kind of, I look back, I go, man, I wish I would have raised my kids in the South Bay, but I was in LA. The fire department in Redondo Beach, there's 20 on duty every day, providing service from 3 fire stations, including a paramedic fire rescue boat in the harbor. We run about 8,000 calls a year. We have paramedics on every rig. That's not normal. In fact, it's unheard of. It's the gold standard. And part of that is because the council and the mayor and everyone invests heavily in public safety. To that end, the 2 years I've been here, we've saved a lot of people. We have a program called the Heart Warrior, and I've never seen a department save so many lives to bring people back to a normal life, to walk into a station and say hi to us. That doesn't happen other than in a city like Redondo Beach because of the equipment and the investment the council makes. We have the best response times I've ever seen. I've traveled throughout the U.S. I've lectured in different departments. And even by the Citygate organizational analysis, they said the same. In fact, they quoted it as excellent response times. And consultants are a little bit apprehensive to use, adjectives like that. But in this case, the data was there. Let's see. Before I kind of just leave it like that. I have some thoughts on the bond, but
Well, we got plenty of questions, so thank
okay.
you. I would agree with you. The mark of the mark you want to have is not being in the news, not being
Exactly.
in the news, right? So I think that's really, that shows that things are running smoothly. I will say, this is my 8th year on the council, 16th year as an elected official, and I spent 8 years on the school board as well. I will say that this town loves our public safety. And I know it's been really tough, especially after the George Floyd riots, that especially police have not gotten the love that they deserve. And, we can all agree every organization has its bad apples. There isn't one out there that does not. But I think one thing I'm really proud of is our council and the mayor and our citizenry and residents all support our public safety. That's like non-negotiable. I think they do a phenomenal job. They deserve all the credit that goes to them. And even when we were looking at county fire, we all just wanted the best for the city, whether it was go to Dakota County or stay with the city. I don't think there were any ulterior motives other than let's make sure that we have the best and efficient running uh, police and fire. And so we decided let's stay with city fire, right? Now we have to invest into the city because we were going to have to do that whether we join county or not. But it's now all hands on deck, and we'll get into Measure FP in a second. But what I want to ask both of you is this fairly straightforward question. Tell us something about your department that we may not know. So, Joe, you want to start first?
Sure. So when people think of a police department, initially the thought is law enforcement. And how many people are you arresting? And how many tickets are you writing? And use of force incidents and pursuits and things like that. So I like to try to put a different spin on law enforcement. I'm going to share my screen again real quick. So instead of calling ourselves just a police department or a law enforcement organization, I like to call us a customer service organization. And I'm going to the second part to that, with a law enforcement focus. So it changes the way that people view the police department. So what we've done is tried to create an environment where we're thinking outside of the box and coming up with creative ways to build trust in the community. And I'll tell you why that's important. That's important because, as Councilmember Lowenstein mentioned, law enforcement gets painted with a very broad brush. Some incident will happen somewhere far away in the country, and there's a perception that all of law enforcement has to deal with. The way that we can manage that is by constantly working to increase the levels of trust in the community and never settling for the level of trust that is present. And the way that we do that is through engagement. So rather than just solely focus on how many arrests are we making, how many tickets are we writing, we also have a very, very heavy focus on community engagement in all kinds of different ways in order to build trust in the police department. So that is why I like to refer to the police department as a customer service organization with a law enforcement focus, which is a little bit uncharacteristic and probably not something that would come to somebody's mind when they're first thinking about a police department.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't have experience with the police until they get pulled over for a ticket or whatever, or they maybe have to call because the neighbors are noisy or whatever it might be. And so I think it's great that you do that. I mean, my own family, my dad always told me to respect law enforcement and fire. And I had a granduncle that was a police officer in St. Louis. So, for me, I was always very used to it. But a lot of people just don't understand the stresses that are involved in the job, the amount of patience that's required, the knowledge that's required for a police officer. And yeah, again, there are people that get carried away, but generally speaking, the training, especially in California, is very, very good. And
Really is.
the level, I mean, maybe you can comment on that, but the level of training out here exceeds a lot of places in the country.
I attended the International Association of Chiefs of Police conference last weekend, and I try to go every year. It's an incredible conference, one of the biggest in the world, actually. And when I go to these sessions and listen to what's being talked about, I'm constantly amazed at how advanced law enforcement in California is, especially in LA County, and even more so in the South Bay with all the 9 cities working together. We're definitely on the leading edge as far as law enforcement goes when it comes to implementing new technologies, recruitment efforts, and training. And having well-trained department members provides a higher level of service while at the same time reducing liability for the city. And when we couple that with the advancements in technology, it really allows us to take the service level to the highest point possible. So I'm constantly impressed with the law enforcement efforts in the Southern California region when compared to other places in the country.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, the liability portion, because besides the fact that, especially innocent people that have been, killed through whatever reason, the cities are liable as well too, right? And so that also has an impact on your effectiveness, on the city's effectiveness. we don't want to overlook the human tragedy of some of these events, but also I think that amazes me that more city governments aren't investing in training because of, to prevent death or injury or to prevent liability. And I'm amazed at that. And I think it's very short-sighted. And I think a lot of times, even within cities, people that say they're pro-police, their policies, their salaries, everything don't reflect that. I think one of the things I'm really proud of is we have labor peace in our city, and we've had all of our associations are under long-term agreements, 3 and 4 year agreements. And I think that's something that I'm really proud of because we've been fair negotiators and we want to make sure that we show our support of people that are serving our community by paying them well, by equipping them well, and making sure that they do the things that they're supposed to do, like having a customer service angle. So I'm really appreciative of that, Joe.
Good. Training is expensive.
Yeah.
Training is a commitment, but training is absolutely essential. We're very fortunate in Redondo Beach to have the support of the mayor and city council to fund the police department that allows us to invest in training and invest in maintaining the highest level of capable personnel that we possibly can. What I've seen in a lot of organizations, not around us, but nationwide, is there's budget crunches all over the place for various reasons. And a lot of times, the first thing to go is a training budget because training a lot of times is flexible. You don't need that to pay a salary. You don't need that to buy a car. You don't need that to fund some sort of critical infrastructure. It's viewed as a luxury by some organizations, where in our organization, it's viewed as critical, and that allows us to be the best prepared public safety agency that we possibly can be.
Yeah. In fact, I would, and in the past, people know this. I've been, questioning how much we spend on vehicles, and I would rather go an extra year without vehicles and make sure that you guys are well trained and well equipped to deal with emergencies before I'd say let's go out and get new squad cars. But we're able to do both. We're fortunate we're able to do both. We run a good, efficient budget, and I'm proud that we have a really great. The first, what I can remember, it hasn't always been that way. And it's usually, there's always an issue in the fire department, there's an issue in the police department. This is the first time I can remember, and I've talked to various rank and file people, that they think that things are going really, really well in both departments. And that has nothing to do with previous chiefs. It has to do with a lot of other factors. Some bad apples and some people there. So anyway, Pat, why don't you tell us a little bit of something about the fire department that we don't know?
One thing that attracted me to Redondo Beach when I was looking for a job, I had like 2 requirements. I had told my wife, and I talked to a headhunter. I go, I want it to be a small department that is community oriented, and I want it to be near the ocean. And so Redondo and San Luis Obispo, I was in their process. While it's not necessarily near, it has that vibe still. In fact, it's the happiest city in the U.S. So, but one of the things that really attracted me to Redondo Beach was the waterfront. I had a background in that area, and I think and the reason I say it's unique, I don't think a lot of people, like my dad was in the Navy. I kind of grew up in a somewhat military family. My brother was in the Army. But in general, Americans kind of have the sea blindness, kind of the inability to appreciate the central role of what the ocean and all that it means to us, from economics to security. And so one of the things I think is unique that I would like to do a better job of is educating what I would say inlanders in Redondo Beach of what a absolute I call a local treasure is to have your own harbor with your own public safety resources. That's not, I don't know of any other harbors like this around, maybe up Northern California, I don't know, Moss Landing or somewhere up there, but you don't see a lot of this. So one, I think that's a unique piece. And secondly, to the ocean front is I don't think a lot of people realize this either, but we are the only paramedic rescue boat in the entire Santa Monica Bay, which is 385 square miles. And it's funny because before I even wanted to quote that stat, I reached out to the county and I said, am I being accurate in this statement? And they said, yes, you are.
Not
Because
even not even Avalon has one.
Avalon is funny. They
Uh,
told me Avalon isn't part of the Santa Monica Bay.
oh, okay, got it.
It's funny
Okay,
because I did ask that. In fact, both
yeah.
Avalon boats do. So one, I think that one thing that a lot of folks don't realize is how much goes on in the harbor, and also um, the fact that we have this rescue boat. In fact, today, I don't know if Mike sent out the notice,
I saw
but
it.
yeah, today we had two young 20-year-old girls that rented paddle boards at Dive and Surf. And, we have a gale warning today and we're flying the flag and whatnot. But they took these paddle boards and they paddled out. They paddled out into the open ocean, and within 5 minutes, they were swept into the rocks. And so our folks went out there and rescued them and brought them back. Fortunately got them in time. We did go have a discussion with Dive and Surf about, renting when weather conditions are as such. And the young kid behind the desk was like, well, we kind of told them. We're like, yeah, but you still rented them. So, but anyhow, that was a rescue that probably goes unnoticed. The other piece is I don't I think we talk about it a lot, but the firefighter paramedics in Redondo Beach are uh, they're quasi ER doctors. In fact, they have so much training and equipment that ER doctors are reluctant to let us leave the scene because the patient's got to have a better chance of surviving under the care of Redondo Beach medics. And that's not normal in most departments. So I think if that's the other piece, like you get hurt in Redondo Beach, you're gonna have platinum service. A CEO of a big Fortune 500 company came back a few months ago, came to visit the station. We didn't know who he was, but he came, brought gifts and all that and food. And he said, I had a heart attack here on a business trip, and you guys saved my life. And I had been in any other part of the country where I normally travel for my company, I don't think I would have survived. And he showed up, he had a driver, showed up, came in, hung out, and left. And to get comments like that, that's something that I think is unique to the department. So those are my thoughts on uniqueness, but there's a lot of other great qualities.
Well, that's a nice story.
Mhm.
I think I remember hearing that. So, why don't we start back with you again, Pat? What do you think the biggest challenges are facing your department? Budget, staffing, where are we at with that?
I think the biggest challenge is the infrastructure. The budget um, seems to be in line with our expenditures, and it doesn't degrade our service. We have some of the best fleet in the region. So the equipment we're invested in, but the infrastructure is subpar.
You're
And
talking about fire stations one and two?
fire stations one and two, and that's exactly. In fact, on my first day on the job in Redondo Beach, my wife drove me to work because I was going to get a department car. And when she dropped me off at the station, she said, "Is this the station?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Can you see that there's holes underneath the eaves?" I go, "Yeah, it looks like that's where the water drains out of." And she goes, "What's up with this place? Are you sure?" Like she was shocked. She was because I'd come from the LAFD with that, even though we have old stations, but a lot of them had rebuilt. So when I got here, I looked at the stations. They looked too small. The equipment seemed to we keep we keep million and a half, no, $2 million worth of rolling stock parked outside. So I would say the biggest challenge facing the department is the infrastructure. And if I were king, I'd say, let's build these things out, because 5 and 10 years from now, we're going to be running more than 8,000 calls. And the only way you can address call load and response times is by having more resources, to that scale. But you can't fit any more resources in the current station.
Yeah.
So I think that's the number one challenge. Other than that, everything runs great. The other thing about this department, I have zero personnel problems.
That's
And
unusual. That's unusual.
yeah, I worked in the LAFD where just in my command, I had about 96 of them a year.
Wow.
So people are happy. But I'd say the big challenge for us is infrastructure. Um,
Yeah, because you have two new fire rigs, right?
yeah, you guys
Which,
got us 2 new rigs and our
yeah,
reserve fleet. No, listen, we have an amazing fleet of rigs, except we don't have places to park them.
that's the problem, right?
Mhm.
So I think I can remember at least in the last 8 years, we bought a new ladder truck, and I thought we bought another rig.
Yep,
I want to say in 2017, 2018.
yep.
So we've had three new rigs. We have the older ones went into reserve.
It went into reserve.
Right. So, which is great. And,
Uh,
they can be used for strike teams or whatever it might be. So,
yeah.
Joe, what do you think your biggest challenges are for the police department?
All right. Okay, so I've talked about it a little bit already, but I like to consider challenges also as opportunities, because if it's a challenge, then there's a way for us to be strategic about addressing it and turning that into a positive. Um, Challenges are good when they create an opportunity for success. So I like to look at them as opportunities as well. And I've mentioned it a couple of times, but I think that our biggest challenge is making sure that nobody in the police department ever settles for the current levels of trust and safety that we have in the community. We can always do more to make the community trust the police department. So when that next unfortunate incident happens somewhere in the country, the residents of Redondo say, well, that's horrible that that happened, but the Redondo Beach Police Department wouldn't do that. And safety. There's always a way for us to implement some sort of new technology, redeploy our resources differently, or do something to increase the level of safety. And we want to do that where there's ownership at every single level in the organization for developing those. And then obviously facilities, we're going to be talking about that a little bit at some point, but our station is very outdated. We're split up. We don't have everybody under one roof. It presents communication challenges, training challenges, leadership challenges. We're working in a very outdated facility. The station was built for about 50 or 60 people. And something that you may not know, this would have been good for the previous question, I suppose, but we have about 240 total personnel in the police department when you factor in full-time officers and professional staff, all of our part-time staff, and our volunteer staff. So it's quite a few people that we have. Big challenges, succession planning. We can't ever just look at the department and think, all right, things are good. No, I need to look 5 years from now and think who's going to be ready to be a sergeant, a lieutenant, a captain, a civilian manager, communications manager, records manager, dispatch supervisor. We need a plan for that now, and we do that through career development. So mentoring and coaching are big things that are considered challenges because we have to constantly work at them. We do that through effective communication and being transparent and constantly trying to share information, but that's a challenge. It's a challenge to get people to properly share information and have meetings and staff meetings and sending out minutes and talking about how to develop themselves. Formal education is a very important thing for me. I try to encourage people to pursue advanced degrees. We're very focused on getting people to department training, but I think that formal education shows a whole different side where it gives people the opportunity to interact with others that are outside of the profession of law enforcement and get a different perspective. And I think it helps develop communication, conflict resolution skills. There's a whole host of benefits. I honestly really don't care what someone gets their degree in. Just the fact that they're getting a degree increases their intellectual capability and makes them a better police officer. And obviously recruitment. Recruitment is always a challenge. Recruitment is a full-blown competition amongst the top law enforcement agencies, and we can never let our foot off the gas. That's why we're constantly seeking overhires, because it takes about 18 months from the time that we have somebody apply until they're actually working on the streets by themselves. So the application process takes several months. By the time they do the written test, the physical agility test, the interview process, get assigned to a background, the background can take a couple of months. Then we have to wait for an academy slot. Once they get into the academy, the police academy is 6 months long. If they're successful and graduate from the academy, then they enter a field training program, which usually ranges around 6 to 7 months. After they successfully complete that, they're still on probation, but now they can operate in the field as a force multiplier as an officer by themselves. So we can never let up with the recruitment, because people get injured, people retire, people transfer out occasionally, and we need to try to maintain that staffing level. We're fortunate right now that we're right there where we want to be with our staffing, but that doesn't mean that we can tap the brakes. We need to keep going full bore ahead to make sure that we're preparing for those people that are going to be with the organization 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now.
How many sworn officers do we have right now, Joe?
Right now, with the overhire of the captain, we're authorized for 100 exactly.
Okay.
That overhire captain will fall off next year when that captain retires, and then we'll be back at 99. When I started as the chief of police in March of 22, we were at 95. And then we got a sergeant at 96. And then we got traffic officers added. And we've steadily increased the number of personnel, which is a good thing, because it allows us to have more available resources on the street at any given time, and we're able to keep that number higher.
Okay, great. How about you, Pat? How many sworn officers, sworn
We
officers?
have 64 sworn officers. The department, when it was 1959, they had 30. 64 sworn officers, and then we have 2 civilian inspectors and 2 civilian admin staff. So we're up to 68 about there. But yeah, sworn, we have 64. Something also in terms of staffing, is one of the things I'm trying to reach out and improve. And we were successful already. Is I like to recruit more women to the department, and so we went out and recruited a San Diego City firefighter. She happens to be from the South Bay, and we were able to convince her to come to Redondo Beach, and she's in her second month, and she's amazing. So that's kind of one of the things I like to focus on down the road. But it's the recruitment of women is difficult in the fire service, because not a lot of young ladies, women want to go into this line of work, and if you do, every fire department in California is trying to recruit you. So,
That's probably
but
right. Yeah.
yeah, but that's our staffing model. One thing that I wanted to touch on that maybe, we'll probably touch on it later. Something that's unique about the city is we have our own 911 communications center.
Mhm.
That's not normal. That's most, even Santa Monica, which is a world destination, they contract out to a Joint Powers, which is the one, what they call
I see.
yeah, RCC or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have our own that is so unique. And in times of a disaster, that's going to be just central to us communicating with each other, ensuring that communications are in place. So that's unique.
Yeah.
That's so.
It is impressive. Barb, you had a question. Did you want to ask that question before we continue?
Yes, I am so happy to have this chance, because I've put it on social media, but I've never gone right to the department and thanked them enough, both departments, starting with the fire department. Jack my husband he was sick for a couple years during COVID, and he needed the paramedics a couple of times. And then finally 2 weeks ago, he wasn't feeling good. He got up and he collapsed and he passed away immediately. So the way that the paramedics responded and the 911 service also was amazing. They were so professional, and like the captain said, they are very much like a physician themselves. They're extremely well trained and knowledgeable. So they took care of Jack, and they did everything. They couldn't help bring him back, but they took care of everything, and they followed up with us. They helped us. They contacted the police, and they carried the ball, and we got everything settled for Jack. And I just want to say that I really, really appreciate it, and I did before it got so bad as well. So I want to thank the fire department, and then going to Chief Hoffman. We go back a long time. Around 2013, we got stuck in 4th of July traffic. It was a disaster. We got redirected all around from Torrance in different places of Redondo, and we couldn't get home. And so I had a little problem with a volunteer policeman, and Chief Hoffman came to the phone when I called, and he was so respectful and so polite and so intelligent. And I just wanted, that was back in 2013. I want to say thanks again for that. So, yeah, Todd, we're really lucky here in Redondo Beach, and I am really hopeful that the measure passes.
And this isn't the first time you brought up how grateful you are, because I know when we've had other meetings,
Oh, good.
you brought it up, and and saying how grateful we are. And I was going to say this at the end of the meeting, but I want to adjourn in Jack's memory because he meant so much to a lot of people in this town. So thanks for your nice comments. Chief Butler.
Yes.
How has firefighting changed in the last 50 years? I think I know the answer to this, but I want everybody to hear this.
So a couple of things. First, EMS has become 85% of our work, and that wasn't really how fire departments were organized back then. It was firefighting, and when I came on, it was 34, going my 35th year. Firefighting was our central goal, big traffic accidents, stuff like that. And EMS was kind of like secondary.
Mm-hmm.
And what has kind of shifted here is that with the advent of building codes, fire codes, safety, building design, everything you can imagine to do fire prevention, we've had see a significant decrease in fires. Oh, we still get the wildland fires, but in general, you've seen a decrease in fires. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have firefighters. You just got to realize that now 80% of our workload has a medical component. And so that would be the first thing about that. Secondly, when I came on, you didn't have to know a whole bunch of technical firefighting stuff. You didn't have to know a lot about hazmat and weapons of mass destruction and response to violent incidents. And so I think nowadays the firefighter paramedics we hire have way more sophisticated training than when I came on. And even though the old timers like to say, oh, when I came on, the academy was super tough and we had to do this, and we had to do that. And I always tell folks, hey, back then the academy, you didn't have to know anything other than water comes out of the hose and ladder goes up on the building. That was it. Put the wet stuff on the red stuff. Nowadays, the folks we hire, and probably Joe has the same experience, have way better skills. In fact, I call it an inversion of skills where they have better skills in areas that I don't have. And so I rely on my younger firefighters sometimes to, give me their perspective. So it's changed that EMS has become central. And here's another piece that we sometimes miss the point is that when people pay their taxes, even in Los Angeles, the assumption is that you're paying your tax for fire suppression, and that your taxes were designed to provide fire suppression. If your home burns, protect the neighborhood. The budgets weren't really designed to expand into 80% EMS. And so departments have continued to expand the role in EMS. And, revenue collection isn't always central to our mission, but I just kind of share it that when folks say, well, I pay taxes, why do they charge me for the ambulance ride? Or I pay taxes, why do I get a fee? And I always tell them because the taxes aren't necessarily designed to cover EMS. So I think that's a big change that we've seen. And definitely kids are smarter and kids are coming on with degrees. Back when I came on, you were in the trades. I was an engine machinist, or you're a carpenter, or you work some kind of trade, or you're a welder, and then you got hired because of your trade background.
Interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Joe, what about you? How has policing changed in the last 50 years?
So, policing has changed the same way that society has changed, and we've just been forced to adapt with it. So I have a unique perspective because I've been a police officer with Redondo Beach for 30 years. So I've actually seen not only how has the profession of policing changed, but how it's actually directly been applied in Redondo Beach. So I think it's really two major areas. One is the focus and the priorities. When I started at Redondo, we had 48 officers out of just over 100 assigned to the patrol division. And that's because everything was focused on responding to the calls, arresting people, writing tickets, and having multiple officers on patrol. Well, things have shifted to where now we have dedicated units dealing with quality of life related issues. When I started here, homelessness was not a major factor. We didn't have a significant amount of our calls dedicated to dealing with homeless related issues. And a lot of e-bikes hadn't been invented yet. Nobody had cell phones. It was a very different environment, and we've had to adjust to that. So now we have around 32 officers assigned to patrol, and we've created special units, community-based policing office, quality of life unit, homeless liaison officer. We have units within the police department that are dedicated with dealing with the issues that are the most important to the residents. And that's been a major shift in society, and the police department has had to adapt. The second one, and I have a few slides that I'm going to show you, is technology. Technology has obviously advanced at a amazing rate over the past, well, 50 years, but in the 30 years that I've been here. When I first started here, we wrote all of our reports with a pen and paper and all of the citations with a pen and paper. And we had very, very little technology for researching data, conducting analysis, and assisting us with crime. So I'm going to show you a couple of the programs we use because you may find them interesting. So this one here is a public opinion polling software that we use that allows members of the public, through some sort of complicated algorithm, which I don't fully understand, these surveys pop up on people's phones and they get to share what their thoughts are about what are their primary concerns. So this is a recent one. And these are all available on our website, by the way. Anybody can go on the Redondo Beach PD website at any time, go to the transparency portal. There's all kinds of information there, including the most recent survey results. And you can see the streets and traffic is always number one, has always been number one. Homelessness and thefts kind of tick back and forth between 2 and 3, but it helps justify our deployment of resources to the traffic unit because traffic issues affect everybody, whether it's traffic on PCH, somebody running a stop sign near your house, e-bike issues, it's a big concern. And we use this data to help justify the way that we deploy resources. This one here is for people that have called the police. So where the previous one was people that haven't called the police or just within the geographical boundaries of Redondo Beach, when somebody actually calls the police and requests services, there's an automated program that sends up a follow-up survey. Ask us how we were doing. Was the response time good? Were the people polite? Did we resolve your problem to your satisfaction? And then we actually follow up with those people and conduct follow-up interviews. And it allows us to check ourselves and make sure that where there's room for improvement, we're capitalizing on it. These types of survey tools were not available historically. So this is something interesting. Coyotes. We never had to deal with coyotes historically. And now not only are we dealing with coyotes, we're trying to incorporate various mapping technology in order to provide information to the public. So this is available on our website, but we haven't widely publicized it yet because we're still working out some of the data. But using our GIS programming, we're able to extract data from our CAD system and then put it onto a plot map so that the public can be aware of where are we getting these calls. And this is technology that is obviously impacting the way that we're able to share information with the public.
Wow.
Street sweepers has been a big one lately. And this is brand new program that we're actually beta testing right now, being shown to the public, other than me mentioning at the city council meeting, this being shown for the first time. So what we're trying to do, we obviously changed the municipal code recently to fall in line with what the practice has been, longstanding practice of once the sweeper and parking enforcement go by, it's okay to park there, even if the sign has prohibited hours for longer than that. But in order to try to be more, I don't know, transparent with the public, we're trying to create a program that is just a web link that will actually show where in the route the sweeper and the parking enforcement are. If it's green, they've already gone through. If it's yellow, they're currently in that segment. And if it's red, don't park there because we haven't got there yet. And we're actually in the process of beta testing that right now. I saw the parking enforcement supervisor and someone from engineering out driving around last week, and they're trying to optimize the size of the segments so that we can minimize the burden on the public with the restrictions on parking, which is always tough in any beach city, including Redondo Beach. So this is technology that is being used that wasn't previously available. Drones. We do not have the need for justifying a full-blown air support program in a city the size of Redondo Beach based on cost and need. But with drones, we're able to actually have that aerial platform in a cost-effective manner. And it has contributed greatly to responding to all different types of calls for service. The pictures there are from a pursuit of somebody that was intoxicated. And we were able to safely take him into custody because the drone found the car before the officers got there and were able to direct him in. We've used it at all kinds of special events like the Beach Life Festival for monitoring the crowds. And we've also assisted fire with a variety of drone deployments as well. So it's an overall public safety tool that is technology that's relatively new that is allowing us to do our jobs better. So just a few examples there, but I think that those are the primary ways that I've seen law enforcement change is with the shift in focus away from just enforcement to engagement and with the application of various technologies into law enforcement to increase overall safety.
I'm amazed by that. And part of the reason I'm amazed by it is knowing how many requests for services you guys get and how limited the number of personnel you have based on our budget that you use information to actually make your policing more efficient. And I think that's really an amazing statistic, not statistic, but example, those examples of how you're using technology. And we've redone our records keeping system. We have, now large databases be able to do this. We have, which is not a surprise to people, we have license plate readers that, we can monitor people coming in and out of the city. policing, just from a civilian's perspective, has really uh, embraced technology. It's pretty cool, pretty
Yeah.
neat. So, Joe, let me stick with you. Give me a role model you've had as a professional.
My father. I mean, I mentioned previously that he was in law enforcement, and he is a very committed and dedicated individual. My father was raised on a farm in Minnesota. He was one of five siblings and established a work ethic at a very young age. He joined the Navy and ended up getting out of the Navy in San Diego. And that is how he met my mother, and then in college, and then they ended up moving to Los Angeles. They actually lived in Long Beach, and he joined the LAPD after his successful military career and getting a degree from Long Beach. And he's still alive today. I'm very proud to say he's 83 years old. He lives in Arizona, and he got me introduced to working and enjoying the outdoors. I'm an avid outdoors person. I like to hunt and fish and hike and camp. And I think that that helps contribute to my character and who I am because I appreciate all things outdoors. And then being in law enforcement, I saw him come and go. He was a police officer before I was born. He became an LAPD officer in 1970. I was born in 1974, and I would see him come and go to work every day. He was a patrol officer. He was a detective. He was a homicide detective for almost 20 years in Los Angeles, South Bureau, which at the height of his career there, they were seeing 400 homicides a year between those divisions in the 80s when the gang violence was at its highest. And I learned a lot from what he had to endure, but still come home and take care of his family. And that has allowed me to develop into who I am. My leadership style is based on a variety of role models that I've encountered throughout my life. It's not after any one person. I played sports and there was coaches that I liked. There's other people throughout my life in business that were entrepreneurs that have had work ethic and characteristics that have helped me build. But the one person that I can probably attribute where I'm at today the most is my father.
Yeah, we share that. You and I share that. I had a lot of respect for my dad as well too. Where I think I knew this. Where did your dad grow up in Minnesota?
It was a small town called Jeffers, and my grandfather was a farmer. They were
Hmm.
sharecroppers. They had a farm that did just about everything. And my dad was raised on the farm, and him and his brothers and sisters and his parents, they were the ones that tended to the farm. And he stayed there until he joined the Navy when he turned 18.
Yeah, I think that's something you and I share. I would go fishing up in northern Minnesota with my dad a lot. I a real love for that. That's the reason I went to business school up in Minneapolis was because I love that region. It's such a neat area. People are great too. A
Yes.
lot of Minnesotans. I have like three of them around me on my street, so it's pretty
Oh,
amazing.
wow.
Yeah.
The weather's better here. The
The
weather's
weather
better.
is a lot better here. Summers are glorious there. Winters, there's what, two seasons there. Uh, Winter and jackhammer season, what they call it. I guess.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, Pat, how about you for a role model? Who was your role model in entering
You
the
know,
firefighting profession?
yeah, it just is kind of interesting. So I was the black sheep in my family. I was a late bloomer for education. So, my brother's a brain surgeon at Harvard. My sister's a senior partner in a law firm. My other sister, they all went to UCLA and they all went to, big name schools. And I was the black sheep. Um,
You're still really smart. Come on.
well, that happened later on in life, but that's how it started.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have any family or anybody in public safety. I didn't know anybody in the fire service, but I knew it was a job that I wanted to have because it's like work their hands. Every day is a different thing, quality of life, it's excitement, it's risk. So when I came on the fire department, there was a captain named Bill Finn, who's I consider for me a role model. And what was unique about Bill Finn is that, of course, he looked the part. He was a Marine, he was, Eagle Scout, super honest, but one of the most respected leaders. And he taught me that when you're the captain of the fire station, your sole focus is to take care of the community within your district. And don't get distracted by the politics of headquarters. Don't get distracted by anything else other than take care of your community. And he taught me things that you ask anybody in Redondo Beach, what are the what are my four priorities? What are the four rules of Chief Butler? I learned them from Bill Finn. What he taught me was number one, you take care of the public. And he said that that's not a bumper sticker. Okay. You're the best trained, you're the most compassionate, you invest the time, you're physically fit. All those things are part of taking care of the public. You know, the next he said is take care of the family, take care of each other, firefighters, take care of each other.
Mhm.
The third thing is never compromise your integrity at all. And the fourth was the most important to him, which I've carried on, I think, to be the most important, was he said, don't ever take away a person's dignity, ever. And you know, if you can continue to be a leader in the fire service and have those four rules, then you'll be successful. And what I learned is that became my guiding principles. And that while we have manuals and rule and books of regulations that are 10 and 18 feet thick, that nobody can expect every employee to have to follow every rule to the T. I tell them these are the four things. And if you do these four things, I'm not really concerned on the other stuff. I'm not really concerned if you missed a deadline for a report or if you didn't raise the flag in time, whatever it is. So my role model was Bill Finn. But interesting story about Joe's dad. So I had a friend, Brent Josephson, was a detective. What Joe's not telling you is that South Bureau Homicide was probably the most prestigious assignment in LAPD. It's a storied detective bureau, and yes, it was an area where they saw a lot of violence and they tried to bring solace and closure to the families that had lost loved ones. And so, yeah, he worked this. And so Brent Josephson goes, "Oh, of course, I knew Dickie Hoffman," and that was what he had called him. So when Joe says his dad was a cop, he wasn't just a cop. He was probably worked in the most storied detective office in the whole department.
Yeah,
But
I mean that's
yeah,
you know, there's been so many movies and everything written about that area, right?
yeah,
And it's a credit, I think, to LAPD that
yep,
our crime rates are way down compared to
yeah,
where they were. And part of it's demographics, but a lot of it has to do with just hard work, right? And
yeah,
policing and
yeah,
law enforcement and sentencing and everything else. And
yeah.
so you know, we've had challenges over the last few years. You know, speaking of that, Joe, there was a spike in crime immediately after, during, and after COVID. What are we seeing now in terms of rates of crime?
Yeah, I'm going to show you. I got a couple. So I was able to pull up some stats just kind of comparing the summer, which is kind of our more busy season. So it's been relatively consistent, but we have seen some upticks in some of the various property related crimes. I have another slide here that I want to show. I want to highlight a couple of things where there have been some anomalies. There's still been an increase in catalytic converter thefts and theft from motor vehicles, and especially the organized retail crime, where they're going into the stores in groups of 2, 3, 4, 5 people. And we're seeing that on a daily basis, mostly near the mall. And it's a real problem. And I think that the problem is that there's a very low prosecution level in Los Angeles County. And when there's a lack of consequences, we see an increase in those types of crimes. And we're still making arrests on it. We don't ignore it. We still bring them to jail. But Redondo borders 5 cities. And these people that are committing crimes in Redondo Beach are often committing crimes in other cities as well. And they don't know where one city stops and another city starts. And we end up dealing with the brunt of it. But here's a scary one. is guns. We are seeing lots of guns on the street, lots of ghost guns. You've heard of a ghost gun. It's manufactured, 3D printed, doesn't have serial numbers. So we've already recovered 41 guns just this year, which is a lot for us. It may not sound like a big number, but when you think about these guns are all in the wrong people's hands, it's a very scary statistic. So we're still dealing with an uptick in theft-related crimes, some simple assaults, and then recovering more guns off the street. And all concerning trends, but optimistic that with some of the upcoming potential changes in legislation where there may be some stiffer penalties for some of these types of theft-related offenses, that we're going to see a dip as we move into 2025.
Okay, thank you. Pat, if you had to change anything about your department, what would be the one thing either change or you would bring to the department that we don't have?
It's a good question. What change would I bring? I think one thing I would like to see is develop a succession plan internally. And oftentimes small, like I'll just share with you that, when it's my time to leave, my preference would be that I've done a good enough job to build the bench that anybody, we don't have to have a name because that doesn't matter. I just know that folks that we're training can step into leadership roles. But I would think I would like to do more about that and start this process, when they're 2 years on the job, to say, what do you want to do next? There's a lot of opportunity, and identify folks that really have that passion and help them. And then those that may not, make sure you support them. So I think succession planning is a big one for me. And I also take it as either a sign of success or failure on my part that, when it's time to leave, I would hope that I would have developed the next leaders for Redondo Beach to be competitive in any process for the next chief. And, other than, I think that's really the key for me is do more to develop the workforce.
Okay. Joe, what about you?
We're very fortunate right now that the culture and the morale at the police department is probably the best I've ever seen it in 30 years. And I'm not just saying that because I happen to be the chief. There's very good energy, and I'm very, very optimistic about the future of the police department. But the one thing that we're lacking, that we have been lacking my entire career, is I would love to see everybody under one roof in a state-of-the-art facility that has adequate space for everybody, so we can improve communication, where we have adequate training rooms, proper evidence storage, state-of-the-art records unit, lobby for the public to come in, community meeting rooms, adequate parking that's secure, proper security for the facility. Fortunately, we have a potential plan to do that. But for the 30 years that I've been here, we've been spread out. I spent probably 20 plus years in the main station where I am right now, and around 10 years in the annex building across the street when I was assigned to investigation, special operations. I did 2 different stints in detectives, one as undercover, one as a lieutenant. I worked in the Special Operations Bureau as a captain. So having everybody under one, it's only across the street. It might as well be 15 miles away. It's crazy how the barrier of Pacific Coast Highway impedes effective communication. I That would be my dream. And if I don't get to see it, then for the next chief is to have all of the police department housed under one roof in a state-of-the-art facility that really shows our commitment to the people that work here and to the community that would use the facility.
Well, that makes a nice segue into the next topic, and that is Measure FP.
Yeah.
Measure FP, for those of you who have not been paying attention, but I think almost everybody has, is a bond measure that is on the November 5th ballot. It is a $93.3 million bond issuance. And why is it needed? Well, let me start off by saying who supports it. All 5 council members support it. The mayor supports it. The Police and Fire Association support it. Many community members support it. Very few don't. Why do we need it? Because the facilities, as you've heard, are in bad shape. Starting from what Pat told us, what his wife noticed. All you have to do is step on the foot of either on the property of either Station 1 or Station 2, Station 1 on Broadway, Station 2 on Grant. Station 3 is beautiful. That was built a few years ago, and our police station is in bad shape. They're inadequate for the size of the departments. They are decrepit. Even if we decided to put all kinds of money into renovating them, we wouldn't be able to house the equipment that Pat was talking about earlier. We're talking about also getting an ambulance service, which will generate revenue for the city. And we have leaks in the ceilings. We have sewage coming out of some of the pipes of the police annex. And honestly, why do it now? Well, because the longer you wait, the more expensive it gets. So, my own opinion is, and I don't tend to be the kind of person, because hindsight is 2020, to question my predecessors. But if we had done this 25, 30 years ago, the bill would not be 93 million. It would have been 35, $40 million probably for all 4 stations. So and I understand that people don't like to see their taxes go up. I'm one of those people that doesn't like to see my taxes go up. But I do know the importance of public safety. And I do know if you don't do it now, then when do you do it? Because it's going to get more expensive. And we can't save our way to it. It's just not possible to do big capital expenditures. So that's why I'm suggesting that people consider voting for Measure FP. I think there are very few things that always at the top list of everybody in the city is what's your biggest priority, and that's police and fire, even before schools, because everybody uses police and fire. They know it's important. And the other reason is our stations are not seismically up to code.
Nope.
So God forbid we have a major earthquake,
Yep.
and we will one of these days.
Yep.
Then how do we get our police out? How do we get our fire out? And we don't want to be the ones with large fires going around the city from gas explosions to not be able to get our fire trucks that we're spending $1.5 million, $2 million on, and be able to get them out of the station. So one of the things, one of my charges is the last few months as a council member is to say, let's support this. This is really important. The city has never issued its own bond, to my knowledge. It's issued school bonds, it's issued other kinds of bonds. It has never done that. There's now no better time to do this. And again, it's going to cost about $17.45 per 100,000 of assessed value. So many folks say, well, what's it going to cost me? Well, many of you that bought in the 70s, 80s, and before that, your assessment is very low. I know somebody that has a $70,000 assessment. They're looking at an extra $1 per month. Many people I know bought 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, they're looking at $180 a year. And people that bought more recently, it's probably $250, $300 a year. What price do you put on making sure that our facilities are adequate? And I don't think there's really a choice here. I think it's something we have to do. And if you say no, then come up with something else that you think would be a good idea, a good way of doing it. And I have not heard the people that have objected, the very few people that have come up with something that they suggest that is actually a workable solution. So, Delia, you have your hand raised. What's your question for either Pat or Joe or me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I'd like to first of all say thanks to the chief, both chief, for the job they are doing. Okay, only I can complain about the stop in Beryl and Lucia that nobody respect, and it's the school. And never is a police there, okay? And I stop close. But now I'd like to talk about the bond.
Okay.
Okay, because I work in the field, I know very well how things cost, okay? The problem that you find and people is against that bond, no, because they don't realize that the facilities need to be replaced, updated, be in the 21st century. That's not the problem. The problem is the person that totally without really knowledge, and I can say very strong, put 93 million bond for build the 4 facilities. When just at the end of the last year, Manhattan Beach, that they call themselves Manhattan Beach money because everything they do is first class and everything there costs a fortune. They built a new facility, the fire station, for only 9 million.4. That means, let's say, 9 millions and a half, to make it simple. How come they can do that with the latest technology, the most advanced? And we, 4 months later or whatever, let's say 1 year later, we need for do the same thing 93 millions. That's the problem. Nobody liked the bond for the 93 million. Whoever put that number is totally lack of knowledge and not really did the research. Because if they had put half a price of million, everybody support that. Because everybody support to replace the police department and fire department. That's not in question. What is in question is the 93 millions. When
Okay,
Manhattan Beach is the best example, recent first class city do the latest for
so
some.
Delia, I want Pat to answer the question.
Yeah.
Before he answers it, I want to say a couple things. One is, Pat, you could probably talk to that station. What I
Yeah.
can tell you is about 15, 18 years ago, Manhattan Beach built a new police and fire station. I want to say one station was 45, $50 million. So I'm not sure that, 9 million, how does it, can you explain
Yeah.
Delia's
It's brand
concern?
new. It's
Yeah.
Let me,
brand
hang
new.
on,
No,
Delia. I
no.
want him to
Okay.
answer the question.
Delia, you raise a great question. And you
Yeah.
know what? I called the builder and the architect for that station. And I said, hey, I want that station and I want that price. That's fantastic. But I got to learn a couple things. It's half the size of our stations, half. Um, and the lot is half the size. So when I told the developer, why can't you just, he goes, I'll give you the plans to the station, but it's not going to benefit you. I go, well, why was it 9 million? Well, you have to remember is it was paid for before 5 years prior to it opening. And so the cost 5 years prior to the opening, I think it opened up just recently. Um, it was 9 million at the time, half the size of yours. He said, so the reason that your stations are going to be in the 20 million range, one, is they're twice the size, and two, we can't forecast what prices in the economy will be 5 years from now. And so we hired the same consultant that Manhattan Beach hired. And he sent me Manhattan Beach's plans. But then I learned quickly that it wasn't going to suffice. Half the size, you would just double that. The next thing is, I'll tell you, is that when I was working on the bond in Los Angeles in the year 2000, we built 19 stations, 20 stations, 20 stations in the year 2000, and the average cost was 17 million. So I too was shocked at how low their price was, but I guarantee you this, that price somehow was a one-off deal and never to be seen again, but half the size, and that won't help us.
So basically what you're saying is half the size, it was, the price was calculated 5 years prior to last year's launch.
Yep.
And then when you add in another 5 years before ours, and there's about 11-year difference.
Yep.
With inflation and everything else. So that,
Absolutely.
because Delia asked a really good question.
Yeah.
Why is it a $9 million station, but its size, do they have a ladder truck in that facility?
No. They only have one unit in there, and they call it their satellite station. Honestly, it's a Ritz-Carlton for 3 people.
How many people are at our stations?
Well, it's station. Uh, there's 20 on duty every day, so one station has 10 on duty, and the other one has 8 plus the chiefs. So 10 at each station on duty daily. That has 3.
Okay,
And
so you have living quarters for more people. They have 2 bays, not 3, I assume.
I don't know. I think they might in the front have 2 bays, but they're very small. And the lot size is half the size of Station One's lot.
So they have a fire truck, they have probably a rescue
I
squad.
don't even think they have anything else. I think they just have a fire engine in there.
Okay, so we'll have a truck and we'll have a ladder truck,
Yep.
probably at least one of them, right?
So for us at Station One, we have a ladder truck, an engine, a squad, a battalion apparatus. So there's 4 resources that respond out of Station One. And at Station Two, we have a squad and 2 engines. So 3 out of there. That station in Manhattan Beach has 1.
So it's really the size of the facility plus when
Yeah.
it was built and when it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, because one of the things, Delia, that we did, and you asked again a really good question. We wanted to make sure that we wouldn't have to go back to voters when these are designed and constructed in 5-7 years and say, hey, we don't have enough money. We needed to make sure that we had enough money in the budget so that we estimated inflationary growth.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody was missing anything. I think it was just you're comparing apples to oranges.
And I think Deli has a good question. I saw her at the meeting at the Galleria. But also, Deli, I would be happy to share with you the plans because they did send us the plans and everything because, it's worthy of some research. But trust me, I try to get the same deal. But the consultant that did theirs is doing ours. They said that's
not going to happen.
not going to happen.
No.
Plus, it's not going to do you guys any good.
Lee, what's your question? I want to make sure we answer your question as well, too. Did we lose you?
Oh. Let me get off mute here.
There we are.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm actually right now Vice Commander at SCYA, and as a result, I get to travel and visit up and down the coast and visit lots of yacht clubs. And one of the things firefighters like to do, it seems, once they retire, is go out and buy a boat and join a yacht club. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. I'll run into somebody like down in, or South Orange County or something. Oh, yeah, as a retired firefighter. Oh, where are you from? Oh, out of LA. Oh, our fire chief's out of LA, Pat Butler. And they go, yeah, I know. I remember Pat. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, Pat is well respected among his fellow colleagues and subordinates in LA Fire Department. So, we're quite lucky to have him. That's one thing. A couple other things. I hardly ever vote for bond measures. I'm voting for FP. One of the things to get to Delia's issues is I think we need to put some trust in our leadership. Just because this is a $97 million bond doesn't mean at the end we're going to spend $97 million. That's the worst case.
Right.
And that's what we're going at here. And that's why I'm supporting this bond measure. I'm also supporting RV. That's an obvious one. And I actually have a question for Joe about crime. So probably one of the most common crimes these days is identity theft. Nonviolent, but, in the end, and usually the person doesn't lose anything because the credit card companies eat the cost, but of course you're paying for that in other ways. But how often are those actually reported to the police, and how many people are assigned to dealing with those things?
We have detectives that handle a wide variety of fraud-related crimes. And when I was in the detective bureau, identity theft was a much more pursued crime because we were getting convictions on it and getting filings on it. And now the credit card companies often just want a police report so that they can cancel everything out and there is no follow-up on those. So the actual arrest of identity theft is down. And we don't see that as a highly reported crime in Redondo Beach anymore. Are they still reported? Yes, but it's mostly just so their credit card companies can clear it up.
I don't even bother to report them anymore when I get a call from a credit card company. Yeah.
It's good. We still like it when we are aware of all the incidents that are going on, but a lot of time if the fraud is at a certain level, the credit card companies just cancel it. They send you out a new card and we never even hear about it. I couldn't imagine how often that happened to my son this week, actually. And it was like an Uber charge and it was like 20 something dollars. And somebody got a hold of his information and I said, okay, we'll cancel that account, cancel that card. And, I didn't tell him to go to the state college police in Pennsylvania and make a report for that. We just handled it and it was on to the next thing.
Yeah, it's so prevalent. Thanks for the question, Lee. Real quick, I know, Pat, you've had experience with this. How do you set up a temporary station if this bond goes through in order to, when they're working on a new station, what do you
No,
do?
absolutely. It's a great question. I've been thinking about this a lot. And when we did this in Los Angeles, not only was I part of the team that put the bond education out there for the folks after it passed, but then I was involved with the design, planning, and budgeting. So there are several companies out there that have temporary fire stations. And if you can just consider what firefighters do in the middle of the state, away from any civilization, we can build an entire city to support a fire. So really good at logistics. The way I see this, and I did this at about 4 stations in Los Angeles. Well, we find a location close to the station. Sometimes you can even do it on the station where they do half of the building. Station 94 and in the Coliseum area did that. But essentially, we put temporary stations up. I've given it some thought, and I'm like, a great location for station ones. And we're going to build one at a time. Um, we're going to build one at a time. But a great location for station one is Vets Park, the area where they do the farmers market. Of course, all this will be temporary, but I think somewhere around there we have city property that we can, for 18-month designate it for our use. And then over at Station 2, we have Anderson Park across the street. And I was like, that would be a great place. There would be an inconvenience for folks that are there, but those are the two places I would say. And the temporary facilities are actually nicer than current facilities. That's how it was in LA. In fact, when we went to transition them to the new stations, a lot of them didn't want to leave the temporary facility.
They're modular buildings?
They're modular buildings. They have kitchens, bathrooms, dormitories. We put all the alarm systems in them. The apparatus is housed outside, normally like in a big carport canvas, hurricane tested. And those are temporary structures. So that's how we do it. Response times are not going to change. Service is not going to change. And and we only going to do it for the period for station one. Okay, put them in their station. Then go station two, and so that's how we, yeah.
So maybe Vets Park, maybe Perry Park.
Yep.
Got it. Okay, last question. Mark, you have your hand raised, and then we're going to adjourn. So Mark, what's your question?
Sure. I mainly wanted to thank the two chiefs for the hard work of some of their guys very specifically and recognize them. We, of course, had the annual community awards earlier this week, and two of Joe's guys got very well-deserved awards for their work with the homeless group. I don't know that I've had a chance to relay this to you, Joe, but we hosted the Pride Paddle at the Yacht Club this summer. And we had a little problem last year. It was a very short-lived problem, but somebody was yelling slurs at our guests, okay, from near the entrance into Mole. I heard about it and I went running out there, to deal with the issue. And here came one or two of the other boaters running and we about hit heads. We were all coming out to defend our guests. We couldn't find whoever did it. But this year, you sent down Kyle Lofstrom, and he was wonderful. He came into the event, just stood there and socialized with us for quite a while. I got to spend some time with him. Then he went out in his car and just stood and kept the car right there at the entrance where the problem had happened last time. And one of the attendees, and let me back up and say that we had our Commodore, our Vice Commodore, myself, and the mayor all sitting in the front row. So between the police department and us, we were making it really clear to any bad people out there, we're not accepting that kind of bull, okay? And one of the attendees turned to me and just says, Mark, we feel really safe here. So, Joe, your department gets big kudos for making that effort. Over to Pat Butler. I want to let you know that last night we had our annual meeting of all the past Commodores of King Harbor Yacht Club. This is normally a very unofficial, no business, just fun event. But our Commodore took the time out to mention that the high seas were coming tonight, and that Chad had stopped by, and he complimented Chad hugely. Saying that he was super nice and let us know what was going on. And then the Commodore stopped himself and just had to repeat it. And he says, I just want you guys to know the city is really looking out for us. So, boy, you guys have got some great ambassadors out there. Finally, I just wanted to mention that on the consent calendar item for tomorrow night is the item to buy that harbor patrol boat. And for you, councilman, okay, in case you're wondering, as you read that admin report, hey, do the boaters agree with all this stuff that Pat typed? And I can tell you, yes, I agree with all that stuff Pat typed, made very good points. One that really struck home to me was getting a boat with a swim step on the back instead of having engines.
I read that. That was interesting. And it's a 50-year-old boat, but it's still revamped, and it's saved us a lot of money. So it's great.
So, just, as a decades-long guy down there, I totally support all the logic that Pat gave you in that. So that's it for me. Thanks for letting me compliment the guys.
No, absolutely. And thank you, Mark, for bringing that up, because we have great community participation with both police and fire. So I want to wrap things up. We tend to wrap things up on time. Apologize for going over. I want to thank both Chief Butler and Chief Hoffman for being here. Much appreciated. It was a great community meeting, town hall. And I want to adjourn in memory of Jack Epstein, who has been a longtime resident of Redondo Beach, Barb's husband, who just passed away less than 2 weeks ago. He was often involved with a lot of civic events and at council meetings, and I'll miss him dearly as a personal friend. And we will be having another community meeting in November, and then we're going to take the month of December off because everybody's celebrating holidays, and it's a busy time of the year for people to be with their families. So again, thank you all for being here. Appreciate you joining our October community meeting. Thank you all for our guest speakers and the good questions we had. And we will see you either at a council meeting or we'll see you at the next community meeting in November. Take care, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you,
everybody.
Go Dodgers.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Oh, look, home run.
You almost got through the whole thing. See you all. Take care. Have a good night.